stocks closed mixed on Wall Street. You have the S&P 500 and Dow Jones, which corrected significantly, but the Nasdaq did notch some minor gains. Banking stocks come under pressure after S&P Global cuts credit ratings and revises the outlook for multiple U.S. banks. High Treasury yields, too, continue to pressure stocks. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific trade mixed, while the GIFT Nifty is implying a lower start for the Indian market. And crude oil settles lower. Brent trades just below $84 a barrel as concerns over Chinese demand recovery take center stage. Gold, meanwhile, holds around its 5-month low. And SEBI issues an interim order in the Brightcom Group preferential allotment matter. CEO Suresh Reddy and CFO Narayan Raju are barred from holding any key managerial positions in listed companies. Suresh Reddy is also barred from the securities market. 22 others, meanwhile, have been restricted from selling company shares. India's moon mission Chandrayaan-3 is on schedule to make history. The Vikram lander will attempt a soft landing on the lunar South Pole at around 6 p.m. this evening. If successful, it will make India the first country to have successfully landed on the South Pole of the moon. Hey guys, good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast. I'm Pavitra Parekh. Those are the top headlines, and today is truly, all set to be a historic day as we do have the Chandrayaan-3, which is, going to make that soft landing on the moon at around 6 p.m. So we are going to bring you updates on that through the day, on where where things currently stand, and through the show as well. So remember to stay with us for all of that action. But as always, let's kickstart the show by bringing you all of the global market updates. We did get a pretty mixed handover from Wall Street, and you have most of the Asian markets which have slipped a little bit in the past 10 odd minutes or so after opening in the green. So you have the Shanghai market, which is currently down 0.4%. That's currently looking the worst right now. Hang Seng on your screen is down just around 20 points. So not too much of a cut, but there has been a slip which has come through in the past few minutes. The Taiwanese market is the one which is really holding up with good gains. So that is seeing around 70 points in terms of a gain. But for the rest of the markets, you are seeing a little bit of weakness come through. So the Kospi is down around 0.4% as well. Nikkei, meanwhile, continues to be quite flat, just around 0.2% in the green right now. The implied open for our own markets also looks like we will start a little bit softer. Around 30 points lower is where we're at on the GIFT Nifty right now. This is after the pullback that we saw in the last hour of trade yesterday. Remember, we closed absolutely flat, at least on the frontline indices. Of course, the mid-caps are a whole other story. But the implied open for our own markets looks like it will be a little bit lower, around 30 points in the red. So that's what's happening across the Asian markets. But let's also talk about the US now. We had Wall Street, which ended yesterday's trading session mixed. So the Dow, like we were pointing out, slid nearly 175 points. The S&P 500 ended around 0.3% lower as well. But the tech-heavy Nasdaq, like you can see, managed to shut just pretty much at the flat line, just around 6-7 points or in the green. And this is after the 1.5% kind of rally that we saw in the previous session. So that pack really continues to hold quite well. We have CNBC's Pippa Stevens, who's here to bring us a wrap of all of that action that we saw on Wall Street.
U.S. markets were mixed today as gains in the tech sector were offset by a slide in bank stocks. The Dow falling 175 points, the S&P down 12 points, but the tech-heavy Nasdaq up 8 points. Bank shares fell after S&P Global downgraded multiple U.S. banks due to liquidity concerns. The agency said higher funding costs and turmoil in the commercial real estate sector will test lenders' credit strength. The action will make borrowing more expensive in the sector, which has been battling a loss of confidence since the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. The move came weeks after Moody's similar downgrades on U.S. banks. Microsoft is making one more bid to get British regulators on board with its takeover of Activision Blizzard. Microsoft is agreeing to sell the streaming rights of its games to Ubisoft, the maker of popular titles like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. The UK is the only remaining major regulator to block the $69 billion deal. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
All right, Pippa, thanks a lot for getting us all of that action from the U.S. But speaking of the U.S., the bond market has really, of course, been the key talking point. Listening to what Ed Yardeni of Yardeni Research had to say as he really explains whether the recent moves that we've seen in Treasury yields signal a larger uptrend. Hear him out.
If you look at the 10-year bond yield prior to the great financial crisis back in 2008, right through the great virus crisis, during that period, interest rates were near record lows, close to zero. But now we're going back to a period prior to the great financial crisis in which the 10-year bond yield was something like 4.5% on average if you look at the years prior to 2007. So I think we're kind of returning back to a normal bond yield. And maybe that's why the stock market isn't all that upset about it. Normal isn't necessarily bad.
All right, that is the word coming in from Eddie Ardini, and that's what we're tracking in terms of the global market action and opinion. But let's talk about all of the individual cues that you should track as well before we get into this trading session. We have Vivek and Surbhi here with the trade setup and all of the stocks that you should have on your radar today as well. Guys, a very good morning to both of you. Vivek, let me come to you first. Yesterday, once again, we ended below that 19,400 kind of mark, and it looks like the start will be a bit in the red. But take us through all of the cues that we should watch.
Well, absolutely right. Like we mentioned, the overnight setup or the overnight handover that we've received is actually quite subdued, and that is indicating a muted start for our own markets. Overnight, most of the US indices ended in the red. Nasdaq managed to eke out a small gain. Crude oil prices yesterday, however, did see a small dip. So yesterday, Brent futures went down 0.5% closer to the $84 a barrel marker. Indian markets yesterday largely lackluster, range-bound session. However, the real action lay in the broader end of the markets, with the mid-cap index actually hitting a fresh lifetime high. Along with that, we are actually seeing quite a bit of activity even in the primary market. So that's where some of the focus too is. Aeroflex Industries yesterday saw very strong subscription. Just on day one saw oversubscription, and even Pyramid Technologies, oversubscribed almost 18 times. When you're talking about listing today, an important listing, TVS Supply Chain. After a long time, you will see a company from the TVS group, coming onto the bourses. And today, one company will report its results as well. Procter & Gamble, Hygiene and Healthcare, will report its results today. That will be an important one to watch out for. Asian markets and GIFT Nifty are indicating a subdued start for our own markets.
Okay, subdued start. Let's see how things really go from there. Vivek, thanks a lot for getting us all of those cues. Let's also talk about some stock-specific action that came through, because there was some important news that we got post-market close yesterday. Surbhi.
Thanks so much for that. So the first one on my radar is Brightcom. Suresh Reddy and Nagayan Raju have been barred from holding any key managerial positions. Jio Financial will also be on my radar. BSE has postponed Jio Financial's removal from indices as the stock hits lower circuit for 2 consecutive trading sessions, and it will be deferred by another 3 days if it hits lower circuit for the next 2 trading sessions. So important to watch out for that. BEML, the company bags an order worth 101 crores from Ministry of Defence. Rights will also be on my radar. It emerges as the lowest bidder for a project worth over 65 crores. And Linde India, the company has received an LOA from IOCL for setting up an air separation unit. Now the company will be funding this capex through its internal accruals.
All right, Surbhi, thanks a lot for that entire list of stocks. Finally, let's also bring Nigel in. He's looking at all of the cues from the futures and options space. Nigel, we ended quite flat for the frontline index, at least yesterday. Take us through how it's looking this morning.
Well, that's right, Pavitra. Yesterday, the big action was in the broader markets, actually. But the reason that the Nifty ended flat was because in the final hour of trade, you had the Nifty Financial Services Index that played out the expiry. So that picture tells you the story. There is some overlap between the Nifty Financial Services Index as well as the Nifty Bank, and both of them ended at the low point of the day. Coming back to how the FIs are positioned, well, they're still net short. Yesterday, there was a mild movement on the open interest, so they continue to remain at close to 57% net short on the index futures. On the option side, you had the 19,400 call, 19,450 call. Both of them added a fair bit of open interest premium between 25 to around 50 rupees approximately. Now, if you're looking at the highest open interest on the call side, post that addition, the 19,400 call, well, that has the highest open interest on the call side. While on the put side, you have it at around 19,300 or thereabouts. The premium out there is close to around 30 rupees. So just plug in those numbers then. You're looking at the near-term resistance at around 19,450 approximately. That's for the day. So yesterday we went to 19,440 and we did a U-turn from there. So that's one important level. On the downside, you're looking at the 50 DMA. And since the 19,300 put has the highest open interest, positioning is such that the 19,270 odd level should hold out. The GIFT Nifty suggesting we pull back a little bit, 30 points odd to kickstart trade. I'll tell you what, I've been saying this all of the last few days. It's a scalper's market. If you get to buy a deeper intraday dip, you need to square off your position once you get a bit of a bounce, because the next day you don't know what's really coming for you. And till we are in this range, I think that scalper's trade will continue. Buy the intraday dip deeper as possible and try to square it off on that day itself if you get a bounce. Otherwise, keep a stop loss in place. Back to you.
All right, Nigel, thanks a lot for getting us all of those cues on, how the trading session could really pan out and everything we should watch as well. But with that, let's get into our first short break on the show. When we return, like we told you, market regulator SEBI has issued an interim order in the Brightcom Group preferential allotment matter. All of the details when we come back. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, and some important news which we got is that market regulator SEBI has issued an interim order in the matter of the issue of preferential shares by the Brightcom Group and barred top executives as well from holding board positions. So Rima is here to take us through all of the details on this one. Rima.
Thanks so much for that. So this is the second interim order which has been passed by the SEBI in the Brightcom Group. There are irregularities in the preferential allotment that the company had done. For starters, prima facie, evidence, observations, findings by the SEBI seem to suggest that BGCL, that's BGL, Brightcom Group itself had financed the preferential issue by round-tripping and circuitous movements of funds to certain allottees through its own subsidiaries. Secondly, they had submitted forged and fabricated account statements as evidence to show the receipts of application money from allottees. Third, the proceeds of the preferential issue were not utilized as per the objects of the preferential issue, which may lead to the fact that the company had siphoned off at least part of the money, or it's not accounted for as of now. So these are some of the irregularities found by SEBI. This is, prima facie observation and findings in their second interim order. Consequently, SEBI has barred the CMD of the company, Suresh Kumar Reddy, and the CFO of the company from holding board positions in any listed companies. The chairman, Suresh Reddy, is barred from operating in the securities market till further orders. He's been asked to square off all open positions within the next 3 months. And not just that, there are also orders against, some other individuals, including market veteran Shankar Sharma, and they have been barred from selling their shares in Brightcom until further notice. SEBI has asked the company to place the interim order before the board of directors within 7 days. Back to you.
All right, Reema, thanks a lot for getting us all of the details on this important story. But with that, let's also bring you some international news that we're tracking now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has arrived in Johannesburg to attend the 15th BRICS Summit. Leaders from 67 countries across Latin America, the Middle East and Africa have all been invited, and a potential expansion of the BRICS grouping is also on the agenda. Now, PM Modi addressed the BRICS Forum leaders' dialogue and will also take part in a closed plenary session along with the other leaders. Reportedly, PM Modi is also likely to have a one-on-one meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping amid the geopolitical tension. So that will be extremely critical to track. Remember, this is the first in-person summit of the BRICS all the way since 2019. So we're going to bring you all of the updates from that. But something else that I want to bring you up to speed with is that, ahead of the G20 Summit, which is scheduled to be held in New Delhi on September 9th and 10th, the Delhi government has gone ahead and declared a holiday for schools as well as the Delhi government and MCD for a period of 3 days. Offices from the 8th of September until the 10th of September, will remain shut as well. Meanwhile, the White House National Security Advisor has confirmed that US President Joe Biden will travel to India for the summit, and President Biden is expected to hold multiple bilaterals on the sidelines of the summit. So that is some important news coming in. But with that, we are going to get into a short break. On the other side, we're only a few hours away from India's Chandrayaan 3 making a soft landing on the moon. So we're going to bring you all of the updates in just a bit. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. We've been talking all about the equity market action. So let's also get a check on what's going on with the commodities. Manisha is here with that quick update. Manisha, good morning. What are you tracking today?
Well, two things for this week, really, Pavitra. One is that you have the Jackson Hole meeting on Friday, so all eyes on that. And ahead of that, we've seen a bit of a decline in the dollar index, but a big surge in the U.S. Treasury yield, and that seems to be weighing onto the markets. The second thing is that China is now permitted 12 provinces to issue nearly 1.5 trillion Chinese yuan special financing bonds, and that in turn has been supportive for many of the metal prices. But take a look at the crude oil prices, because we've seen further decline on this one. The Chinese demand is weak, and markets are looking at further U.S. rate hike expectations to contain the inflation, and that's weighing onto the markets. But the metal prices, because of the China permitting this trillions of Chinese yuan, is really supportive. So you have seen copper, aluminum nearly 1 to 1.5% overnight, and ferrous metals like steel and iron ore also are trading at 3-week highs right now because of that.
All right, Manisha, thanks a lot for bringing us all of those details in terms of the action that we're seeing in the commodity markets. But with that, let's all talk about the news that we're waiting for. And D-Day is finally here as Chandrayaan-3 approaches closer to the surface of the moon. India is now only a few hours away from creating history with its third lunar mission. Now, the countdown will end at around 6 p.m. today. That is when a soft landing is expected for the Chandrayaan-3. And ahead of this, the Indian Space Research Organization shared latest pictures of the moon captured by the camera on the landing rover. Archana joins us with more details on this. Archana, we've reached the final phase of the mission. Take us through what we know so far.
There are so many emotions right now around the Chandrayaan-3 landing on the moon, and why not? Because if successful, India will become the first country to land on moon's south pole. At 5:45 p.m. India time, Chandrayaan-3 will attempt a soft landing and is expected to touch down on the surface of the moon around 6:04 p.m. There's a lot of curiosity about how Chandrayaan-3 will do so, because it is during this phase when Chandrayaan-2 crashed the last time. And K. Sivan, then chairman of ISRO, had described this phase as 15 minutes of terror. Let's attempt to explain how the landing will happen in 4 phases. From Bengaluru, ISRO will give command to lander Vikram in phase 1. The Vikram lander, that would be orbiting the moon at an altitude of 30 kilometers, will be in a horizontal position and will attempt to come down. The velocity at this point will be 1.68 kilometers a second. Now, this process will take about 690 seconds. In stage 2, the lander, which would now be at 7.4 kilometer height from the moon's surface, will tilt from horizontal to vertical position. The speed of the lander will be reduced further, and this process will take about 10 seconds. Phase 3, which is called the final braking phase, the lander will fully move into the vertical position from the horizontal position, and it will now cover a distance of 28.52 kilometers to the landing site, and the speed will be 0. The craft is now just 800 to 100 meters away from the moon's surface. Now, this is the trickiest phase, as Chandrayaan-2 crashed in the same stage where it lost control. And stage 4, when the lander is almost near the landing site, it will then carry out some tests to understand whether there are some obstacles or not. That is when it will decide to land there itself or move to a different location where it is safer to land. Now, Chandrayaan-3 will target a similar landing site as its predecessor, and this region is of important interest because of the potential presence of water that was discovered by none other than Chandrayaan-1. So basically, these 15 minutes are very crucial. The lander has to fire its engines at the right time, at the right altitude, and use just the right amount of fuel and finally touch down. Not to mention, the lander Vikram has to do all of this on its own, because ISRO will not be able to guide much from Earth. Now, what next? After the successful landing, the images captured by the cameras on board, the spacecraft will be shared with Earth. However, ISRO has said that yes, if the conditions are not favorable, the touchdown will be pushed to 27th of August. Back to you.
All right, this is very interesting to know, Archana. Thanks a lot for bringing us all of the details, and you can trust us to bring you all of the action on the Chandrayaan-3 soft landing at around 6 p.m. today. But with that, we're going to wind down in this edition of Power Breakfast. Thank you for tuning in. We have Bazaar Morning Call after this short break.